Well, greetings, viewers and voyeurs. Got that funk here, and a video that's sort of inspired by a conversation that I've been watching between I Like Newman and Inmendum, and the subject is suffering. Now, I've been contemplating doing a video on suffering ever since I started making videos a year and a half ago, but for some reason I never got around to it. But finally, here it is. Now, I want to straight up say that everything I'm about to say is my opinion. I am not making truth claims here, and I don't want to overstate my case. I have a very strident way of expressing myself, and sometimes it can come across as if I'm making truth claims, so I thought I better put that disclaimer out there right away. Anyway, in a purely material universe where there is no sentient life, there wouldn't be any right or wrong, there wouldn't be any good or bad, and there wouldn't be any suffering. There also wouldn't be any pleasure, there wouldn't be any joy, there wouldn't be any intelligence. Once you introduce sentient life into a material universe, you introduce the capacity for the development of fear and pain. Now, fear and pain exist within sentience because without those two qualities of sentience, um, survival would be severely impaired. Without being able to experience the fear of danger, you wouldn't be able to recognize it, and the organism would therefore more likely perish. The same is true of pain. Pain exists to notify an organism that danger or injury is imminent, and therefore the organism can take action to avoid it, or not, as the case might be. And the closer sentience becomes towards intelligence, the greater these capacities become. And intelligence to me seems like a good thing, a good development, because with intelligence comes the capacity to recognize suffering as a bad thing. Because before intelligence developed, there was suffering. Sentient life existed way before intelligence did, and animals make each other suffer. Even plants suffer in their own way, I suppose, but that's a different argument, different conversation. My basic point, though, is that animals make each other suffer, even bereft of intelligence. Therefore, intelligence must be a good thing, as it's the only arbiter between wanton suffering and being able to mitigate against suffering. So I know I didn't pick my words very well there. Sorry about that. Anyway, I think you get what I'm driving at. Without intelligence, we have no chance whatsoever of minimizing or mitigating against suffering. Now, I'm not for one moment trying to say that suffering is a good thing, but I do think that consciousness, and by extension, intelligence, is a good thing. But of course, it's actually redundant because, as I said at the beginning, without intelligence, consciousness, and sentience, you can't have good. There is no such thing as good. So it is a bit redundant. But, the fact is that we do have human intelligence, consciousness, and we do have the capacity to mitigate against suffering. Now, suffering is also beneficial in another sense, because without suffering, there would be no capacity to develop any sense of empathy. And that sense of empathy is necessary in order to, like I say, begin any process of mitigating against suffering of others. Any organism will try to mitigate against its own suffering. That's natural. But it might not necessarily be natural to mitigate against suffering if there was no such thing as empathy. So you can't have empathy without suffering. So you see, to me, suffering and pain and fear are the actual bedrock, if you will. They're the terra firma from which other aspects of consciousness can grow. Not all of them are good, of course, and you could easily argue, as Inmendum sort of seems to do, that on balance, more bad shit grows out of that than good shit, and I think that's there's a point to be made there. But I also think that if we think of life as a good thing, not our own human life, but life itself, sentient life as a good thing, then we have to accept suffering as part of the package. Now, is it our moral responsibility as intelligent beings to mitigate against suffering? I think so. I think if there is any such thing as morality, if we want to say that there's such a thing as goodness, then we have to say that we want to increase that. And it necessarily follows that the way to increase goodness in the universe is to mitigate against or try to prevent or, you know, slow down suffering. But we also have to be realistic. There is no way that you can eliminate suffering. It can't be done. All sentient life suffers. So, we have to walk the tightrope, really, and try to come to some sort of internal reconciliation between the fact that no matter what we do in our life, sometimes we're going to hurt things, people and the world and animals, and, we are going to hurt things. It's inevitable. And that doesn't excuse us or absolve us of the responsibility to try not to. Quite far from it. But we have to be mature enough. We have to be realistic enough to recognize that there is nothing we can do to prevent suffering. It's not about prevention. It's about how to deal with it. I've long made the argument that how we deal with suffering in many ways defines an individual. And I've said the same thing about pain. How people deal with their own pain in many ways defines their character. So, I believe that suffering is a necessary part of conscious reality. And therefore, even if we don't have to value it in the sense that we think suffering is a good thing, we have to value it in the sense that if we value our consciousness, we must recognize the place that suffering has within it. That's all I got. It's Got That Funk. Thanks for watching, and may all your ups and downs be ups.